Okay, so we'll get the webinar started here. Give us another minute or so just to let the last few people join that are trying to get on, and we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Okay, it's right at 5 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and we'll just get one last minute, last 60 seconds to let people join so they don't miss out on anything, and we'll get started. Well, super. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is leveraging AI to run smarter marketing, metrics, and practice growth strategies. This is an educational webinar, and it combines the insights of several different companies, MedShark Digital, Illume, and Pink Sky. And our panelists today include Ben Wolber, who is the founder and CEO of Illume, and Abby Honecker, who is the president of Partner Success over at Pink Sky. I've had the pleasure of getting to know them, not only know them, but work with them because I have a huge faith in what they do. So I'm glad that they're able to share their insights with us today. And my name is Bill Fakui, and I run a business. I run the business development for MedShark Digital. And so a couple of housekeeping items, but let me start by just saying, hello and happy St. Patrick's Day to you, Ben and Abby.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
So welcome. A couple of housekeeping items is number one, we want this webinar to be insightful and certainly helpful and engaging. So we're not going to be regurgitating a static slide deck. And the panelists today are going to be the ones that are going to continually share good information and dialogue to keep this as a lively, entertaining, educational format. Second thing is you should have a chat feature in there on your screen in your controls. And if you have any questions, feel free to chat them. We'll be collecting them and we'll absolutely do our best to address all of them. And really, just a summary, our goal today is to make sure that you get insights to provide you with really actionable kinds of things to walk away from this session, whether that's in a list of to-dos or just, that one or two nuggets that you absolutely need to start doing tomorrow. Our goal is to make sure that you get them, whether that's a practice management item or an operations or a marketing, but walk away with some really good information. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, but I'd like for our panelists today to maybe do just a quick, brief background so everybody knows who they are. I've had the pleasure, but Ben, why don't you start? Go ahead and give us just a little backgrounder.
Yeah, great to be here. As Bill mentioned, I'm Ben, founder of Illume. We're an analytics platform specifically built for med spas and wellness brands that connects your systems like your EMRs, your marketing platforms, and your financial tools so that practices can actually understand what's driving revenue and performance inside their business.
Super. And how about you, Abby? You've been everywhere, but do a quick backgrounder so everybody knows
I'll
who
give you
you
my
are.
elevator pitch. Yes, as Bill said, my name is Abby Honecker. I am president of partner success at Pink Sky. As far as it goes with the aesthetic and wellness space, we're dinosaurs. If you have an issue, we have a tissue. And so we're able to help you across all lines of your business, from operations to sourcing to scaling, growing, exiting. There's really nothing that we can't accomplish.
Super. Boy, you guys are really good at doing the elevator pitch thing. Uh, Great. So let's kick this off. Because, Abby, you have such a broad background of different practice management, operations, training, personnel, marketing, you do it pretty much it all. Um, let's start with you. What do you see as kind of the biggest challenges you see, facing practices, especially when they're trying to grow in this crazy environment?
Yeah, I have this conversation daily, honestly, weekly, monthly with my clients, potential clients, and partners in the industry, is that they just need more leads. They need more people, right? And so you'll see a lot of marketing companies, which talk about, well, we brought you this many leads this month, right? We brought you this many leads. It's your job to convert them. And what actually happens is, you have your marketing running, you have your leads coming in, you feel like you have your systems in place, but ultimately, there is no conversion. There's not a lot of happening together. There's not that instantaneous, AI included. And so it's not necessarily a lead problem, it's a systems problem. And so incorporating your software technology, AI, and then your human systems together is what I see is when you're going to get the most success, and you're going to grow, and you're going to see better results.
Yeah, and
You know,
oh, sorry.
go ahead, Ben.
I would
Go
say
ahead, jump in.
to add to Abby's point, really reiterating everything she said, the real opportunity is what happens after the lead as well. So like how quickly your team is following up, how well your providers are converting their consultations, how effectively that schedule is being used at your location. That's where we've seen a lot of practices have success.
We use the term speed to lead, right? It's
Yeah.
how fast, the longer something goes, the greater the likelihood it's going to go away is what happens.
Yep.
Um, Abby, what do you see as, typically when when you're talking about that disconnect between, the marketing generated opportunities at bats that a practice gets. Where's the disconnect between the strategy and the exec? Because we all have the greatest of intentions, right? There's nobody out there that just wants to fail, right? So where's the disconnect between the strategy and the execution that you're seeing?
Well, this is why I will always have a job, because it's operational, right? A lot of times, it's not understanding the process and how to maximize effort or maximize dollar spend. We want to make sure that we have consistent processes. We want to make sure that, we have an accountability with our team. We understand it, right, Ben? We can have the best platforms and the best AI tools, but if you don't know how to use them, it makes it really hard. And if we don't understand, how to interpret everything that's coming in, it's a big problem. And so I have a lot, like I said, I have a lot of clients when they first onboard and we start talking about marketing and we start talking about their operational systems and what that looks like. There's lots of great ideas, but no follow through. So, if you're going to use these systems because you're going to you have to also know how to understand them. You have to know how to use it, and you need to make sure your team is doing that on a consistent basis, day in and day out.
You touch on probably the one area that I've always said was the biggest gap because I've been in advertising and marketing for, over 30 years. So number one, I'm an old guy, but it's nothing changes. In that period of time, nothing's changed in terms of what is the biggest gap. And that is, like you were saying, how do you interpret the data? How do we put that into actionable things? So I'm going to turn to you, Ben. Ben, in terms of the data, right, is how do we move into, that data quickly because you once told me practices don't have a data problem,
Mhm.
right? They got
Yeah.
more data than they know what to do with, right?
Yeah.
So, on your side, what are you seeing, that gap and how can practices go about, filling that?
Yeah. Absolutely. And to relate this to like the broader marketing discussion, so what we see most often isn't actually like a marketing issue. It usually depends on the performance inside the practice. So when you look at your data across different practices, different locations, the biggest questions people that we see are asking within our platform is like which providers are converting consultations into treatments,
Uh,
which services are actually generating the most revenue, and where are operational bottlenecks happening. So a lot of practices assume the solution is sometimes more leads. But when you dig into their specific numbers, the opportunity is usually improving the performance within the practice itself, which is where like an Abby comes in to play as well.
that's that when you're talking about the data, right? It's somewhat intimidating for practices,
Yeah.
right? Because they're relying on a consultant like Abby to get all that for them and just spoon feed this
Yeah.
to them, right? Um, and so I think that's part of the challenge is just how did they go about getting it, right?
Yeah.
And that it's also understanding it, right?
Yeah.
Understanding the data and not just, oh, you need to do this, but it's understanding the why, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about, so maybe Abby or Ben, you can kind of jump in is like what metrics should practices actually be tracking then, right? If it's not enough data, it's too much data. What data should they be looking at
Ben,
and
I'll let you jump
marketing,
in.
as it relates
Yeah.
to marketing?
So I do want to also touch on the point you made earlier about that data can be intimidating. And what I think the biggest mistake is in a lot of these like practices that we're working with is a lot of people try to track too many things. So the best approach that we usually recommend is by focusing on just a few of your core metrics that actually are driving the business forward. So think of like conversion rates, provider utilization, revenue per provider, and appointment cancellations or like no shows. So once practices can understand those numbers, the data becomes a lot less intimidating because it starts telling a clearer story. And then as you're kind of peeling back that onion, you can kind of spot where opportunities are. And then from there, technology and AI can help surface those insights automatically. So your team doesn't have to sit there and dig through a million Excel reports.
Abby, you had mentioned that, that practices always start with it's the leads, right? They talk about they think about leads first, and then everything else maybe fall by the wayside. Where do you see practices, kind of get it wrong?
Yeah, exactly what Ben was saying. You have to understand the data. And so it's not just about that. It's not just about the lead coming in, but about the front end revenue and how do we get to that front end revenue, right? We know what our cost per lead is, but we want to look at our follow up, our speed to lead time. We want to make sure that we understand our appointment, our lead to appointment conversion, our appointment to invoice conversion. That's really important because that drives our decisions. And if you're not looking at these and you're just throwing money at an ad, you're hoping something sticks. And so when you're able to understand these metrics and what those conversion rates should be, and even the predictive AI within Ben's platform to help navigate that, it's really beneficial. And then that's where me and my team come in. We set those standards, we set that goalpost, and we know exactly where we need to hit every month. We help them understand what the game plan is going to be to, whatever we decide to do, whether it was based on our knowledge or our AI knowledge base, we're going to now implement a plan for all of our humans to implement so that we're able to consistently hit those goals, and then also use that to be strategic in how we make our expense decisions.
I love the fact that we're, what we're talking about here is, and what I always hear from practices is, oh, the leads are bad because we're not seeing people walk in the front door,
Or they're
right? Like they're
canceling,
not,
or they're no
yeah,
showing, right? It's always
or they're
somebody
no
else's
showing
fault.
or
It's always
whatever,
somebody
right?
else's fault. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. But we all know that many times it's a follow-up, the timing. We're late in following up with them. It's a day or 2 days after we actually get the lead that we're actually following up with them, or maybe it's our front desk, how they're answering the phone calls or whatnot, right? It's just how are patients being handled.
Yeah.
So in terms of, with that, Ben, what do you typically see in terms of, Abby's kind of mentioned like,
Yeah.
these metrics, the milestones, the minimum performance, or what are you seeing in terms of, because practices don't know many times what a good
Yeah.
cancellation rate is or
Yeah.
or what, right? So how
Yeah.
can you maybe shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, we actually saw this with a client recently where their marketing looked fine on the surface, like leads were coming in, but their cancellation rate was around 20 to 24%, which
Holy
is
cow.
extremely high. And from
Yeah.
my understanding, the benchmark's around 10 to 12%. So when our system flagged it, it showed there was roughly an $80,000 revenue opportunity just from improving the appointment follow through. And really, the fix had nothing to do with marketing. It was a front desk workflow issue around confirmations and follow up. And that's where data becomes really powerful because it then, again, helps practices to see where the real problem is. And they're not just spending time blaming marketing sometimes.
With that in mind, right? So your platform, maybe we can get into that a little bit later too, is more of the detail, but just surface level, right? Abby, when you see practices and you're getting this kind of data, these benchmarks, and you know what practices should be doing, right? You know who's high performing and who's really kind of fallen asleep at the wheel, right? Where do you see practices most often wasting marketing spend? Because I like to think every lead's a good lead, but where are you seeing practices waste marketing dollars?
I, I think it's set it and forget it, right? A lot of ad spend
Mhm.
goes out. I had a client at one point who was like, I just want to do 10K more on ad spend. That's what I need when, a lot of those ads weren't performing. And this was a
Mhm.
conversation of like, what's the expectation of these leads coming in? Let's qualify them. Let's really invest in the demographic and let's attract the clientele that we want, because that's what's going to help us convert them into an invoice, into revenue. So making sure that we understand our client base, we understand what we're trying to track, and then focus on that, and not just keep throwing ad spend. Again, I that's the biggest piece for me is when I dive into a client and we do our financial audit, is looking at their marketing spend and what's working and what's not, and let's fix it.
Yeah, you touched on the one area from my advertising background that I'm really passionate about is practice when the quote set it and forget it is what most pay-per-click advertising, and they set a budget, what's your monthly budget, and then they spend it, right? I agree with you. You've got to look at this more strategically. Um, and if there's a month where or months where you're just running the same budget, the same thing, month over month over month over month, you are absolutely wasting money,
Wasting money.
right?
And yeah, and to what we were saying, if we're really looking at this from an AI perspective, how are we using AI to nurture those leads? That is so important. If you are not using AI to nurture every lead that you paid for, because there is a cost to that. You paid for
Yes.
that person to come into your funnel, to your automations, your workflows. You have to be utilizing AI, and you have to utilize it in a way that's smart, to make sure
Yeah.
that you're nurturing and you're continuing to move that lead through the funnel and pipeline in order to get them in
Mhm.
front of you.
No, and I would also say, in addition to that, it is the seasonality, right? If you've got, hey, let's face it, I just submitted my tax returns a week ago, right?
Well,
We
you're better
know
than
that
me. I
there's
haven't done it yet. I'm a
But we
procrastinator. I'm
know,
waiting. I'm waiting.
everybody says, oh, we see a huge spike in business and
Yeah.
traffic and leads during the springtime, and everybody's thinking, oh, well, because people are wearing more revealing clothes and they're wanting people to see them more. They're not hibernating anymore. I'm going to tell you, when there's money in the marketplace, that's when people have an opportunity to spend it. And tax return time is many times the one time of the year that I have a lump sum of money in my checking account that I can pay for cosmetic or aesthetic or on me, right? That I'm going to do this for me, right? My wife does that all the time. When she gets a tax return, she knows what she's going to spend her money on. I know I just bought myself a set of clubs. So,
I just paid for my
so,
peptides. I just paid for my
so
peptides, so it's fine.
But yeah, so or if I have some practices that still do things on Medicare and stuff, and it's year-end deductibles being met. So there's seasonalities to a lot of different things, and working with, somebody that understands your numbers, what kind of procedures and treatments, when they spike, when they drop, where to spend money at what time for which procedures and stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff I think, Abby, that you're talking about, that, don't just set it and forget it and then come December, oh, let's see what we did, right?
Absolutely. In real time.
Yeah, real time. So, in terms of platforms, practices use a ton of different platforms today, right? Where do you see technology and actually helping streamline some of these, operations when you're talking about AI or any kind of technology?
Well, Ben and I have been working together recently and connecting and working with a lot of different platforms. He's a great partner when you're looking at opening up that integration. But everything needs to communicate, right? We know this today, so you want things that you want software that plays in the sand. But when we're looking at ads, we're looking at marketing, we're looking at AI, and we're looking at the analytics of all of this, which is the big play here, right? The trifecta.
Yes.
You've got to have a system that everyone adheres to. So I route all of my marketing, my leads, my website, my phone, my email, my Instagram, my socials, anything, everything goes through my CRM. We utilize that when making inbound and outbound calls. So for traceability, which gives great analytics and visibility on that speed to lead. It also gives AI the knowledge base it needs to learn from all of these interactions, and then can also assist in nurturing, your clientele as they come in. So making sure your EMR, your CRM, all of your marketing, and then of course your dashboards, your financial dashboards, are talking and playing in the sand together, is very pivotal.
Ben, now I'm going to turn to you. This integration of all these platforms, right? Um, 2 years ago, to
Yeah.
say that they actually talk to each other or that I could pull this stuff together was impossible,
Yeah.
right? You had your CRM over here, everything was siloed and stuff.
Export your CSV, Ben.
Oh yeah. Um,
So how do roles of integration kind of share your insights here?
Yeah, I mean, integrations for us are obviously foundational. That's how we're getting data. Most practices, obviously, the EMR is the source of truth. And like Abby was touching on, like most practices today are operating across multiple systems. So your EMR, your marketing platforms, scheduling tools, like your QuickBooks, and each system only shows really a piece of the picture.
Hmm.
And really, once those systems are connected, you can actually see the full patient journey in a sense. So like you can see where the patient came from, you can see how they booked, you can see what services they purchased. Then you can also track what revenue that service generated. And really, without integrations, you're essentially making decisions on partial data. Um, and we're also seeing a lot of innovation happening inside of most of the core platforms themselves. For example, we have a lot of Boulevard clients, and they rolled out an AI powered like precision scheduling tool, which helps identify and optimize their booking times for clients, learns each provider's schedule and their patterns to really help minimize the gap that they're seeing, then also help them maximize their provider's revenue throughout the day. So those types of innovations are happening all throughout EMRs in the space. And then when those types of operational tools also connect with analytics platforms, that's where practices can really start optimizing their performance across their entire business.
That's great. So when you're, one of the things that when you're saying integrating and talking to, I remember a time when um, practices would have their EMR and they lived in their EMR, right? And I said, well, where are all the leads? All the leads that are coming into the practice, where are they? They're like, our EMR doesn't track leads. We don't track leads. I'm like going, what? So, I mean, we've come a long way. We've come a long way in terms of what is available. Um, Abby, in terms of this integration and flexibility, practices being more agile, right? They got to do more things. Um, is there any tips or ideas, feedback that you can give, insights, when it comes to, that implementation, that
Yeah.
implementation lens, right?
Yeah, technology changes so fast, right? So we always have to be on our toes. We have to be willing to change and we have to be willing to learn. But ultimately, using these platforms, it is one thing, but understanding them, I think it goes back to our first point. You have your EMR, you have your CRM, you have your AI, your KPI dashboard. You're looking at all of your metrics. You have analytics. You have all the information there that you can, but without your four steps of discovery, education, launch, and audit. That auditing piece is now how do you use it to maximize your efforts, and really looking at what is happening at every touch point with the lead as it comes through, and then turns into a client. And once they're a client, how do we keep them? Right? Because that's the process too. So it's not just getting clients, but it's retaining them. So, looking at that rebooking number, understanding it, setting a goal, making sure it's built into your patient journey, and your systems. And there's several touch points to get that client rebooked. These are all things, that when you incorporate your systems that integrate and add AI, you're going to be able to actually see revenue from your efforts versus just we've purchased all the platforms, we have the integrations, everybody is using the platform, but then nothing happens because now we're not really looking at the data. And we all know garbage in is garbage out. So making sure that your systems are set up properly and you really understand them is going to be key in utilizing them in your day to day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if I
Go
might
ahead, Ben.
add, to take from like a higher level, usually what we recommend is three things when practices are implementing any new technology. So you first start with the problem that you're solving, not the tool. So what I've seen, a lot of practices are buying softwares before they've clearly defined what they're trying to solve. Whether that's cancellations, provider utilizations, or like marketing performance. Second, make sure they integrate with the systems you're already using. So technology works best when you're easily able to connect it with the platforms like your EMR, your scheduling system, any marketing tools that you're using. So you're not creating more silos. And then third, really try to keep it simple for the team or whoever is going to be utilizing the tool. So tools that get adopted are the ones that's making everyone's lives easier, whether that's your front desk staff managing appointments or providers really understanding their performance. If the team, at least from RC, if the team can see value quickly, adoption tends to happen really naturally.
Well, and I just want to add one thing, Ben, too, your provider dashboard that gives visibility. I can't tell you the number of times I interviewed a provider and I asked them, do you know what your KPIs are? Do you know what your revenue per hour is? Do you know what your average this, that, or the other? They have no idea,
No
right?
idea.
So
Yeah.
that piece of the puzzle, Loom is really solving for, which is making my life very easy when I implement this with my practices because now it's not just my manager or my team lead or department lead that is driving these like, okay, here's what your numbers are. This is where you need to be. They can see it in real time and they know exactly where they are in order to hit that next tier of their compensation or that bonus structure that's been
Yeah.
built out for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So Abby, if if they get this kind of information, right? If they get all this good data and really insights, not just data, but
Right.
analytics of what is all this number, and it boils down to this, right? What are our KPIs? Those kinds of things. Yet we know that there are practices that have access to this, all this practice information and the dashboards, yet they struggle to act on it, right?
Yeah.
What's the barrier? Why practices don't, and what can they do to embrace it and really, be hungry for it?
I mean, using the predictive AI of this piece of the puzzle is really important because it does help you, right? If you don't have an Abby in your practice in your back pocket to help you analyze it, Illume's platform will help you do that. Ultimately, it's truly understanding it. And the way, and if my clients, they've worked with me for a while and we're transitioning over to our AI dashboards. But every client gets a financial audit and we do their KPI dashboard. And every month they put all of their things in. And then we go and mark it red, yellow, and green. And I'm helping them and I'm assisting them. And this really solves for that time period, right? It's going to be right there. It's going to tell you what's the good, the bad, the ugly. They don't need to wait for an Abby. We can set that up and establish that from day one. And honestly, what happens is, even when you have the platform, Ben and I talked about this, right? Sometimes people, they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to look at their data and they ignore it. And because it's coming in and, oh, we have visibility, so we know how much money we're making, but they really don't look at their opportunities. And so, having someone to walk through that and teach them that and really hold them accountable, meaning your manager
I think
daily,
I think
daily.
that's what the main
Yeah.
point is we all need people to keep us accountable for what
Hmm.
we do, right?
Yeah.
Even as a business owner, we like to think as a business owner, hey, I don't have anybody holding me accountable, right? I
Right.
just kind of do whatever the heck I want, right? Um, but we need people, whether that's internally or an Abby or somebody that's going to say, hey, red flag here. We've got a problem. Hey,
Time to
Scotty,
fix
we
it.
need more. We
Yeah.
need more. Um, but I think it's the accountability part. It
What's that
is.
foundation? It's the foundation of your business, right? If you don't, you can set up and have all the right tools and all of the right things, but honestly, if you're just throwing more money at one thing to solve your problem, that's never going to be the answer, is it? You have to really look internally of what's working, what's not. And when you use the platforms that integrate and you incorporate AI and maybe an Abby, you can really discover where the leaky holes are, and then you can go in and we start repairing those. And from there, you're going to see revenue generated. You're going to see growth. You're going to see the culture in your clinic change. There's going to be a lot of things that come from that. It's not just a one-off of more money or more clients, right? That it's a very much bigger picture than just that. But having the right tech stack is really important.
Yeah, and
No,
if I might quickly jump
yeah.
in, from like a data perspective, the biggest barrier we're seeing is not like a technology, it's a confidence in the numbers. So,
Mm,
like a lot of practices, no matter the size, look at dashboards or AI and feel like they need to be data experts in some cases to use them. But in reality, the goal of those tools is actually the opposite. It's to simplify the information, and then highlight the things that actually matter within your day to day. And the practice that we've seen adopted successfully start small. Again, I keep reiterating that part, but they really focus on a handful of key metrics and then they utilize technology to surface insights instead of trying to analyze everything themselves on 18 different tabs in an Excel.
No,
yeah, right.
I think that's great. And I'm going to ask because Abby's talking about customizing each one of these to the practice, right? And holding those providers accountable, right? But I also know that, Ben, you work with so many different practices
Yeah.
across the board. You see in aesthetics, there's
Mhm.
there's like a consistency, right?
Yeah.
You see common
Yeah.
threads amongst all these different practices, right? So, and I would encourage if there's anybody watching, this is where you got to take notes, right? This is
Yeah.
what you write down. What are your examples of insights,
Yeah.
the practices, need to be looking at regularly?
Yeah. The biggest ones we see practices focusing on are really operational metrics that are driving their revenue day in, day out. So think like provider performance, which is like who's converting consultations and
Hmm.
generating revenue, utilization rates, so how providers' schedules actually are filled, top performing services, so what's driving the most revenue, and then any like what's causing repeat visits, and then revenue per provider. Those metrics usually surface the biggest opportunities inside of a practice. We're also seeing a shift towards role-based dashboarding. So like think your injectors get access now, your front desk teams get access, and managers each see the metrics that matter for their specific role. And then you as the owner would have the high level view in each area of your business. And even like operational insights like scheduling efficiency, making sure providers' days are optimized, and then minimizing those gaps can have a huge impact on your overall revenue.
Well,
That is
and
so,
and to
and I'm
speak
going
to
to ask
that,
you, Abby.
yeah.
I'm going to ask you, and you can jump on your point, but before I forget, all of the things that Ben kind of pointed out, provider performance, utilization, and all those types of things. And it's in a role-based display, right? I
Yep.
know what my numbers are, right? I know what my numbers are. And as a consultant, trainer, business manager, business partner, I mean, you work at a lot of different levels. When you see issues like this is a big challenge for practices. How do they improve this, right? If I see a provider that's underperforming or a staff member, whatever, if their dashboards are showing that they are underperforming relative to everybody else, how do you go? What's your role? How do you go out
Yeah.
and fix that?
Well, just
So, oh, sorry. Is this an
no.
Abby question?
I'm going to jump in here real quick to say this.
Yeah.
So, for example, okay, I can take the information that my KPI that Ben's platform delivers, and I can go in and now I can interpret that and I can make magic happen in a clinic. But how do I share that and teach that with all of the clinics that I work with?
Yes.
And so, let me just give an example. This is a perfect example, right? We know our utilization rate. We know what that utilization rate is across the platform. We know what our individual providers' utilization rates are. We have that visible. And we know those benchmarks that we want to hit. And so, but now what? How do we get that utilization rate to shift? That's where people come in. That's where you interpret the data. So, on the end of every week, when I was managing my practices, or I was actually the one in rolling up my sleeves and doing the work, at the end of every week, I would look at the utilization rate coming up for the next week. So let's say we were 65% utilized. And I would also look at how do we close out the week. And now on Monday, when we started our next week, I would go in with the team. Okay, guys, we're 65% utilized. I need that to be above 80 by end of week. What are we going to do collectively to change that? What are some things that we can do? And I just worked on with a practice this week, and we built out what are we going to do to help fill the schedule when we're not busy. And we started listing out all the things and the different reports we were going to pull and how we're going to connect with people and how we're going to use that in our AI CRM to do targeted patient outreach. And then at the end of the week, in their same like Teams channel, Slack channel, whatever application you're using for communication within your teams, I go, okay, guys, we closed out the week at 85% utilized. Well done. What do you think was the biggest driver of that? And we look at it, the day after. And then I say,
Mhm.
all right, next week we're at 65% utilization, 80% utilization. How are we going to get that closer to 100? We're always driving, and it's by letting the team has access to that information. But then again, the accountability factor of we're not just going to settle for 55% utilization next week. We're not just going to just accept that this is where we are, and hopefully we'll get some new leads from our marketing team or our website or whatever
Mhm.
that looks like. Or maybe, Abby, you should be posting more on social media as my provider, right? There's all of these things that you should be doing, right? We know those things, but knowledge is so important. And if I'm coming to you and I'm using, now I don't have to sit and pull the reports. I don't have to do the math and divide the appointments by the open time. I have that information there. I've got my AI predictive, insights that are telling me what to do. But now I, the human, am taking all of that knowledge and implementing it into systems and accountability and education and knowledge. And so when I'm able to educate the team, they know now where we're going. We work together to get to that goal. And then we celebrate our wins, or we look at how we didn't hit that goal at the end of the week. Actually, we finished at a utilization rate that's less than where we started. Okay, that's a loss for us. That's a fail. So let's not do that again, guys. What do we think we could have done better? And always having that dialogue, and everybody knows the mission. All four tires are going in the same direction. And that's so important. And I think that's one of the things I would say, as you're never going to be able to replace that piece
Hmm.
of it with AI and all of
Right.
that, but you can't do it at this time at the speed to lead that we need to do it, or even with our providers and our culture to keep them where they need to go, or our team members,
Hmm.
without utilizing these platforms. And so that's like
Right.
a really long answer to your question, but that's just one
No.
example of how you can use this and implement with those four things, right? With,
Yeah.
the knowledge base, the education, the auditing, the accountability, the goal setting, all of those things have to play in to getting you to that next level. You can't just cross your fingers or throw
Yeah.
something against a wall or tell your team members to be better. What is it that we're going to do, and what are the processes so that everybody's moving in the same direction? So that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I
I
would
think the
say.
buy-in. It's the
And
Yeah.
buy-in, right?
if you don't mind, I'll answer
Yeah.
from a data perspective. So the first step is visibility. So a lot of what Abby was saying. So a lot of practices don't realize there's a performance gap until they really start looking at their data.
Right.
And then once they can see things like your consultation to treatment conversion rates or your revenue per provider, it becomes much easier to identify where improvement might be needed. And then from there, it usually turns into like coaching or operational adjustments, things like
Hmm.
refining your workflows,
Right.
improving
Right.
patient education during your appointments, or even just adjusting the schedule to make sure the providers are seeing the right mix of services. In most cases, it's not about like replacing the provider. It's about giving the teams the visibility and feedback they need to really improve their performance.
Right.
Hmm.
And Abby, you'd mentioned, the speed to lead in your response. We did have a question. What tools are you using to track speed to lead? Maybe Ben is the best one to answer this, or you, but if we can address that, what tools would you say have you used with practices to help them gauge that speed to lead?
I'm happy to take this, Ben, first if yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to mention a static CRM. I've seen a lot of great use cases from that. Um, they seem to be really crushing it in that speed to lead, especially they're a really solid CRM. That's a popular tool I've seen with both larger clients of mine and also smaller clients.
Yeah, and I think pushing everything, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, really utilizing, if you're paying for a platform, you should use it. And you should make everyone adopt it in your clinic, and everyone should understand it inside and out and use it properly. And with a good CRM, like you were saying, you're going to push your phone calls through. You're going to push everything through that CRM, because now what do I have? I have real data of if we're using different platforms, or if we're going in and using the social, and if we're not really truly putting all of our data in one place, you have no visibility. And so for me, my best practice is pushing all of it. And then once that client books an appointment, they're now in your EMR. And that's just my
Mhm.
best practice for how that should look. And when you truly have a great CRM that's AI powered, I want to say that
Mhm.
AI powered, because we all know Go High Level can do workflows and automations and all of those things. But in this day and time, I'm not waiting. And I'm your ideal client, right? I'm the almost 50-year-old woman that wants everything, and I will take all my money, right? I'm going to give it to you. But I'm not going to wait for you to call me back 3 days later. And I'm busy, and I'm not going to come to your clinic and sit down and do discovery. I don't have time. I'm working too much. So I need to have immediate interaction with me at all times. And I want to hear the phone calls when they answer the phone. I want to be able to secret shop my team members. Like, there's so many things that can be done with your CRM, if it's the right CRM and if it's able to track those numbers. And then of course, Ben's platform, integrating with it to give it to me in real time in my dashboard, and for me to be able to see it is like a non-negotiable these days.
You had mentioned, AI CRM, an AI compatible, AI driven CRM. Um, as it relates to AI, Ben, um, how can AI help leverage that CRM to better understand, quote, performance, right?
Yeah.
How can that turn into revenue opportunities?
Yeah, so the biggest shift we're seeing in AI is creating really most practices are looking at their static reports, but the shift with AI is we're seeing moving from those to receiving the insights automatically. So instead of someone through your current dashboard trying to figure out what's going on, AI can now automatically identify
Oh,
patterns in your data. So
wow.
things like declining provider utilization or rising cancellation service or
So it's
cancellation
almost like
rates.
red flags,
Yeah,
right? Hey,
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
warning, warning, Will Robinson.
yeah, no, exactly. And it also like has the ability to flag services that are underperforming.
Yeah.
So it can now surface those opportunities and then even recommend action. So instead of asking like, hey, like what should we be looking at today? The system can essentially say like, hey, here's a revenue lift opportunity that's worth your attention. And that's where things are heading, I think, just with AI in general.
And,
Absolutely.
and Abby, when it comes to that, though, I still think it does, all those things still need people, right? We still need,
Yeah.
AI can't do everything, right?
It's not ready. It's not ready, and I would never want your practice to be solely reliant on that when you're putting money towards that lead. That lead costs money, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to merge AI and the human touch to nurture everyone, right? 'Cause not everyone's like me, right? My mom all day, every day wants you to pick up the phone. She's going to answer it. She wants you to talk to her. She wants you to schedule her appointment. She wants you to remind her. She doesn't want any, she doesn't want to talk to a robot. I don't care. I just want it done quickly. So everyone is different. You have to nurture, you have to meet your clientele where they are. And at the end of the day, it takes a little bit of both to get us over the hump. So when you were talking about AI with your CRM, you need to have a strong knowledge base trained, right? You need to understand the process of updating your knowledge base within your platform to make sure that AI is helping you, not hurting you, right? I've had a few clinics that don't truly understand it and therefore it's giving bad information. Again, Ben knows this, garbage in, garbage out. So making sure that you train your AI like it's an employee, you give it as much attention as your employee, and then you're going to be able to replicate it over and over and over and over so your humans can truly be humans. I always say this when I sit in front of a client and we're having a call. I remember the day that I was like taking notes and I was typing while they were talking and I was trying to remember all the things that they were doing and I think how did I do that? How do I can't remember what I did 5 minutes ago now. It's like forget it. But now I just sit and I'm present. I'm present, and that's what we're truly doing with a lot of my providers now is incorporating AI into their consultation piece and their treatment so that they're able to truly be present and listen and educate the human. So when you embrace AI in the way that it can benefit you while maintaining that human element, it's really important. So AI is going to do predictive recommendations with the platform, but ultimately it has to be your human, your manager, your lead that's going to step in and audit, implement, and hold accountability, but also celebrate the wins.
Yeah, and something I'll quickly add. You're the expert in your business, not AI. Like AI can do a really
Exactly.
great job at putting up guardrails, but at the end of the day, you as the practice owner or operations manager, whatever your role is, you are the expert within your specific lane of the practice.
I love it.
Love
I'm going to go back to some because it's been percolating in the back of my head. I'm a marketer and doing advertising, and I'm all about generating new opportunities, right? New patients, first time visitors to the website and all that kind of stuff, right? Getting more people. But as a business owner, especially in the aesthetic space, I know marketing and new patient generation is priming the pump, The real pump is your existing patients. It's the recurring, revenue. It is the lifetime patient, right? You had talked, Abby, you had talked earlier about that nurturing and how AI can help you with that side of it. Most practices think, oh, our patients love us, and they let this thing go, right? They say, oh, we got great reviews, our patients love us, they don't go anywhere. But when they look at their stuff, they realize there's a sieve happening here. We've lost where these patients are coming back, right? When they realize it. How do you leverage AI and, your data to help practices better manage their existing patients?
Targeted patient outreach, right? Back in the day, we had to like run that report. We had to upload it into our system and then send out those emails or messages for those particular clients. What's beautiful now is that we're able to nurture our entire database right now through it can integrate with your EMR, and now it knows it's 3 months, it's been 4 months, and you don't have an appointment on the book and you haven't been in for Botox. It's going to hit you with that text message, it's going to hit you with that email. You don't have to do that anymore, you don't have to manage that anymore, right? And now we're not missing a single opportunity. So you build out those workflows, automations, you train your AI to do that, and it's going to pull that data in, and you're going to be able to nurture consistently your database, right? That's the biggest piece of this, because we all hate those text messages, or maybe we don't read the email, but maybe we do, right? Maybe we're like, oh, that flagged it, that trickled it, right? It was like, oh, I had to cancel my appointment 3 months ago because Nathaniel needed me to take him somewhere, right? And now it's like, oh, I got to get back in there. It triggers something to remind me. But you know what's even better? If I have to pick up the phone, or I have to now go to your website I need a link right there within that text message that takes me to where I can book. And now I have that appointment. Everything should be seamless. But you should still, to your point, be able to pick up that phone and do it as well, or go to your website and do it as well. It really depends, but everything should be systematically integrated, where AI is helping you. But you shouldn't have to just think of AI as nurturing new leads. It can
Yeah.
absolutely nurture
Yes.
your database that you currently have. Like, let's get
Yeah.
them back in, because there's somebody around the corner that is trying to get them and will keep them. Where, again, don't and never forget about the client experience, because once they walk through your door, that's you. There's no way to change that, right? And if your client experience isn't top notch, which is one of my favorite things to speak on, you're going to lose that client, because that's what keeps them coming back. Driving past every other clinic for 30 miles where price becomes irrelevant because of that human interaction. But you absolutely can use AI to nurture your targeted patient database.
Yeah, and to add from a data perspective, a lot of it does come down to kind of what Abby was alluding to, is proactive outreach, and really understanding your specific patient behaviors. So, for
Mhm.
example, when you're looking at the data across your practice, you can start to see the patterns, like how often the patients typically return for certain treatments, when the cancellations tend to happen, or which services are leading to like a repeat visit. So with the help of AI, you can also help surface those opportunities and trigger that outreach message, like things like an appointment reminder, like Abby said, follow-ups after treatment, reaching out when a patient is likely due for their next service. That's a low-hanging fruit that I usually see in practices. And like, for instance, if a patient typically returns for Botox every 3 to 4 months, an AI system can flag that and prompt the practice to reach out before that specific window passes.
Yeah, and I will say this. I'm on the front end. I'm on the lead gen side of the business, but I will tell you, the happiest clients are not the ones that generate the most leads. It's the one that makes the most money, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're the ones that I never hear from them because they're making money. They're doing well, they're making money. They don't care how many leads they get. They're generating business, right?
Right.
And to that point, I hear practices say, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to text them all this stuff, or I don't want to. I'm like going, whoa, time out. You are missing the point here. If you have great customer service, your rapport and relationship with your patients are at that level, this is not selling, this is helping. This is to be helpful to, because we know people are busy, right? We're just trying to anticipate and help them so that they get the things that they need when they need it, right? That's
Absolutely.
helpful. It's not necessarily, I'm not barraging these people. It is, I am here to be helpful. And I think if they approach it with the messaging and everything comes across in that spirit, that's the tone of the practice, I think that elevates or the confidence that practices, yeah, we need to do more of this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, hey, we're getting close to the top of the hour again. So I'm going to ask a couple of, maybe a final question. Um, and Abby, if a practice wants to become more data driven starting today, like, and there's a lot of practices that this is so new to them yet, right? What do they need to do? What's the first step in becoming more data driven starting tomorrow?
I think it's very simple, like Ben said. Don't overwhelm yourself. Keep those data points small. Start with a few of your revenue drivers, your utilization, conversion rates, like what happens for that lead journey, like what happens along the way. Where are we dropping them? Maybe that's what we focus on is that one point, and we fix and we solve for that and understand it. But honestly, for me personally, having worked in clinics, it's truly making sure that the data that you have is accurate, right? That your systems are being done and they're being achieved at the same level across the entire clinic. Everyone
Mhm.
is doing the same thing so that that data is accurate. And so making sure that your systems are tight, making sure your software and technology is set up properly, it's all talking to one another, but just pick a few. Pick a few of those important ones. I can't really, I know Ben mentioned a few. It's hard for me, right? There's some big power hitters, right? Utilization, rebooking. We know we want that above 80%. There's like a few things that are just across the board. But every clinic is truly different, and having someone come in and do an audit of like where maybe you're losing the most revenue or where you should really focus, and then now you know what that is. Like Ben was saying, do some discovery, really understand where the breakdowns happen, and then that has to be your driver, and just pick a few of those and work slowly at a time across, and
Yeah.
then it'll all fall into place.
And even I'll quickly add, even when we're onboarding clients, like I usually challenge them to pick one problem that they're trying to solve with our
Uh-huh.
solution. And it's like, hey, like what KPI is top of mind for you? It could be utilization, it could be revenue per provider, it could be revenue per hour, whatever that is. It's like, okay, focus on that one for the next 30
Yeah.
days. Let's see what happens. Because it also allows the end user to get their feet wet with analytics in general, because it is a newer spend category. So it just helps them ease into that space.
Super. Well, I appreciate all the insights you guys have shared today. And for those like Abby, you were talking about doing audits and things like that as a first step. How can they start doing that? I'm going to share their our contact information. You can reach Ben at this email, and you can also reach Abby as well. The Abby, do me a favor. When they go to that QR code, where does that go and what do they get with that?
It's going to take them to a form, and they're just going to fill out their information to request. And there's going to be another AI video that they're going to be able to take a look at and how to incorporate AI into their practice. They can also request to have a free strategy session with my team here at Pink Sky, completely free. Go through, we'll create your strategic action plan to really kind of highlight those areas that you might want to focus on, and then you'll be able to utilize and hone in on the data in those areas.
Super. And Ben, kind of give them an idea, the attendees, what to expect when they go to your QR code.
Yeah, so the QR code actually takes us to, or takes you to our website, where we just have a handful of questions that helps us have a more like strategic and structured discussion when we hop on the phone. But after that, we have like a Calendly link on there. So you can just book a demo if you're interested. Or Abby and I also host strategy sessions most of the time together. It's a free like 15, 30-minute call that we do together just to understand the current pain points within the practice, even from like a financial analytics perspective. So Abby and I will also offer those on our website as well.
I think I need to do one for myself with you too. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. So, no, I appreciate that, and you can check out our QR code. We basically, one of the things we did not talk about in this webinar was, and I know practices are looking to see how they could market more efficiently and better get visibility on ChatGPT or Google's new AI, optimization and Google AI overview. We have done case studies for the last 2 years on AI related results and searches and queries, and we have somewhat of a playbook. And there is a difference between optimizing for ChatGPT as opposed to Google AI overview, right? And there's different strategies and where different things fall in line. We'll do another webinar about those types of things and strategies, but I wanted to take this time to focus on the things that most practices overlook because they're being oversold, I think, many times on the SEO side of AI and not looking at how they can embrace AI in their practices and improve it internally. So,
Bill, I think that's such a great point, and I do want to say that if your practice is not utilizing AI within your search, if they are only doing SEO, or if you haven't adopted the new platform, it's time to get with MedShark here and Bill and his team, because it's so important. Because I will tell you, it's funny. My daughter. I was like, an AI nerd, as we're very clear. I've been using AI for a long time. I'm obsessed with it. I'm totally integrated. I'm fine, right? I don't even type anymore. However, my daughter was like, "Oh, all AI is a glorified Google." Because everyone in her generation is using that to search for what they need or where they want to go and what they're looking for. And so if you're not truly, if you're not optimizing for AEO or what, that you're going to get left behind.
yeah, no question. And it's happening so fast,
So
right?
fast. Yeah.
There was a time when, the Mavericks, blaze the trail. They get all the low-lying fruit. Well, the time is coming where that time is the window is closing in terms of being a trailblazer.
And you
So,
guys do audits like for websites as well with
oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
AI.
we
Yeah.
do, and that's what you'll get to with the QR code. We do audits of your website, your Google business profile, your reviews, your social media, pretty much all the different aspects of what influences AI signals, and how to get ranked and the value, the ranking factors of each of those and where you should be putting your resources and your money.
Yeah, I need to get with you on that. I'm just enough dangerous to speak to it, but I need to know some of those. I need to know some of those baselines. So when I'm looking at those things, I can give true insight. So I probably
Yeah,
have to
that's super. Well,
have to
we'll
get with
we'll
you
have
too.
you guys on another one and we'll get into that too.
Okay, perfect.
Super. Well, thank you everybody for joining tonight and thank you guys for all your great insights. Have a great evening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.